The very wealthy, some of these countries are extraordinarily wealthy from oil money or gas money. These very wealthy and powerful nations in that region can no longer expect the United States to do their work for them. Uncle Sam cannot and should not do it all. We are not the policemen of the world. As we continue a strongly coordinated effort against ISIS, the United States and other Western nations should be supportive of efforts to fight ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But it is the countries in the region that have to stand up to these violently extremist and brutal organizations. Now, I realize that given the geopolitics of the region, this is not going to be easy. I realize that there are very strong and historical disagreements between different countries in the region about how ISIS should be dealt with. I realize different countries have different priorities, but we can help set the agenda and mobilize stronger collective action to defeat ISIS in a lasting way. Bottom line is, the countries in the region, countries which, by the way, are most threatened by ISIS, they're going to have to come together. They're going to have to work out their compromises. They are going to have to lead the effort with the support of the United States and other major powers in destroying ISIS. Yes. Another major challenge in the region, of course, is the Syrian civil war, one of the worst humanitarian disasters in modern history. After 5 years of brutal conflict, the only solution in Syria will be, in my view, a negotiated political settlement. Those who advocate for stronger military involvement by the U.S. to oust Assad from power have not paid close enough attention to history. That would simply prolong the war and increase the chaos in Syria, not end it. In other words, we all recognize that Assad is a brutal, brutal dictator. But I think our priorities right now have got to be destroy ISIS, work out a political settlement with Russia and Iran to get Assad out of power. I applaud Secretary Kerry and the Obama administration for negotiating a partial ceasefire between the Assad regime and most opposition forces. The ceasefire shows the value of American-led diplomacy rather than escalating violence. It may not seem like a lot, but it is. Diplomacy in this instance has had some real success. Let me also say what I think most Americans now understand, that for a great military power like the United States, it is easy to remove a brutal dictator from power. But it is much more difficult to comprehend what happens the day after that tyrant is removed from power and a political vacuum occurs. All of us know what has occurred in Iraq. We got rid of Saddam Hussein, a brutal, brutal murderer and a tyrant. And yet we created massive instability in that region, which led to the creation of ISIS. I am very proud to have been one of the members in Congress to vote against that disastrous war. And the situation is not totally dissimilar from what has happened in Libya. We got rid of a terrible dictator there, Colonel Gaddafi, but right now chaos has erupted and ISIS now has a foothold in that area. Bottom line is that regime change for a major power like us is not hard, but understanding what happens afterward is something that always has got to be taken into consideration.
That's right. Yeah.
In my view, the military option for a powerful nation like ours, the most powerful in the world, should always be on the table. That's why we have the most powerful military in the world. but it should always be the last resort, not the first resort. Another major challenge in the region is Iran, which routinely destabilizes the Middle East and threatens the security of Israel. Now, I think all of us agree that Iran must not be able to acquire a nuclear weapon. That would just destabilize that entire region and create disastrous consequences. Where we may disagree is how to achieve that goal. I personally strongly supported the nuclear agreement with the United States, France, China, Germany, Russia, the United Kingdom, and Iran, because I believe it is the best hope to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. And I want to thank the Obama administration for doing a very good job under very, very difficult circumstances. I believe we have an obligation to pursue diplomatic solutions before resorting to military intervention. You know, it is very easy for politicians to go before the people and talk about how tough we are. We want to wipe out everybody else. But I think if we have learned anything from history, is that we pursue every diplomatic option before we resort to military intervention.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, more often than not, diplomacy can achieve goals that military intervention cannot achieve. And that is why I supported the sanctions that brought Iran to the negotiating table and allowed us to reach an agreement. But let me tell you what I firmly believe. The bottom line is this. If successfully implemented, and I think it can be, the nuclear deal will prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. And preventing Iran from getting the bomb makes the world a safer place. Does the agreement achieve everything I would like? Of course not. But to my mind, it is far better than the path we were on, with Iran developing nuclear weapons and the potential for military intervention by the United States and Israel growing greater by the day. I do not accept the idea that the pro-Israel position was to oppose that agreement. Preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon will strengthen not only the United States' security, but Israel's security as well. And I am not alone in that idea. While Prime Minister Netanyahu is vocally opposed to the accord, his is hardly a consensus opinion in Israel, and it's important that everybody understand that. Dozens of former security officials in Israel, including retired army generals and chiefs of the Shin Bet and Mossad intelligence agencies, support the agreement. Netanyahu may not, but many others in Israel do. But let me be clear. If Iran does not live up to the agreement, we should reimpose sanctions, and all options are back on the table. Moreover, the deal does not mean that we let Iran's aggressive acts go unchecked. The world must stand united in condemning Iran's recent ballistic missile tests, as well as its continued support for terrorism through groups like Hezbollah. Going forward, I believe we need a longer-term vision for dealing with Iran that balances two important objectives. First, we must counter the destabilizing behavior of Iran's leaders. But secondly, we must also leave the door open to more diplomacy to encourage Iranian moderates and the segments of the Iranian people, especially the younger generations, who want a better relationship with the West. While only a small step in the right direction, I was heartened by the results of the recent parliamentary elections in which Iranian voters elected moderates. They elected moderates in what was in part a referendum on the nuclear deal. I know that some say that there is just no dealing with Iran in any way at all for the foreseeable future. And that is the position of some. After all, Iran is in competition with Saudi Arabia and its allies for influences over that region. But a more balanced approach towards Iran that serves our national security interests should hardly be a radical idea. We have serious concerns about the nature of the Iranian government, but we have to be honest enough, and sometimes we are not, to admit that Saudi Arabia, a repressive regime in its own right, is hardly an example of Jeffersonian democracy. Balancing firmness with willingness to engage with diplomacy in dealing with Iran will not be easy, but it is the wisest course of action to help improve the long-term prospects of stability and peace in the Middle East and to keep us safe. Lastly, these are some, not all, of the major issues where the interests of Israel intersect with those of the U.S. I would address these issues and challenges as I would most issues, and that is by having an honest and open discussion and by bringing people together. The truth is, there are good people on both sides who want peace. And the other truth is, there are despots and liars on both sides who benefit from continued antagonisms. And I would conclude by saying there has been a disturbing trend among some of the Republicans in this presidential election that take a very, very different approach. And their approach, I think, would be a disaster for this country. The Republican frontrunner, Mr. Trump, suggested limiting immigration according to religion and creating a national database based on religion, something unprecedented in our country's history. Now, this would not only go against everything that we stand for as a nation, but also in terms of our relationship to the rest of the world, it would be a disaster. So let me just conclude by saying this. The issues that I've discussed today are not going to be easily solved. Everybody knows that. But I think the United States has the opportunity as the most powerful nation on earth to play an extraordinary role in trying to bring people together, to try to put together coalitions in the region to destroy ISIS. And that is a responsibility that I, if elected president, would accept in a very, very serious way. We have seen too many wars, too much killing, too much suffering. And let us all together, people of good faith, do everything that we can to finally bring peace and stability to that region. Thank you all.